Remote starter season is just around the corner, believe it or not. And for many, if not most 12-volt retailers, it represents a significant portion of the annual revenue. However, in these strange and unprecedented times, the manufacturers have been impacted with both supply and logistical challenges that ultimately will affect you, the dealer. Tonight, on this very special roundtable edition of CMA Live, representatives from some of the biggest brands have come together to share the latest in updates and developments on the ongoing battle to provide for this upcoming remote starter season. CMA Live, the Remote Starter Roundtable, starts now.
There's never been a better time to have SiriusXM, with even more exclusive content, like over 140 channels in your vehicle, including the widest, deepest variety of music, ad-free. Root for your team. Get news. Listen to whatever makes you laugh. And hear all about your favorite stars. Your all-access trial includes more than ever before to enjoy online, on your phone, or at home. Create your own ad-free personalized stations powered by Pandora. Hear ad-free extra channels filled with music and enjoy favorite shows with SiriusXM Video. Thousands of hours of shows and performances on demand. What you love is on now.
Hey guys, thanks for taking the time to tune into this special roundtable edition where it's going to all be about remote starters tonight. But before we get the show started, it's really important for us to take a moment. You see, recently we lost an important member of our industry. And, Mark Rutledge was a pioneer. He was an innovator, a leader, and a very close friend to many within our community. So on behalf of all of us here at CMA, we'd like to take just a quick moment of silence to remember Mr. Rutledge and to acknowledge his legacy that he leaves behind. It's been a weird and wacky season. I think everybody has felt the impact of all the different things going on. So when it came to planning for this particular CMA Live, we got together. We reached out to the brands that matter, those who are in charge and manufacturing, making the remote starters that the dealers need to get through remote starter season. Now, there's no doubt there's a lot of interesting conundrums happening, and we thought as a collective, and I have to give credit where credit is due, these manufacturers got together and came to us and said, you know what, let's get together, let's do a roundtable, let's discuss important issues that are going to directly impact the dealers and hopefully equip them with as much forecasting and knowledge as possible so that they can best prepare for the upcoming season. So without further ado, I'd like to go ahead and bring on my esteemed guest for this evening for this roundtable. And let's welcome to the show. Gentlemen, welcome everybody to CMA Live Remote Starter Roundtable. I'd like to start with quick introductions, starting on my left, or your right if you're watching, is Mr. Joe Dentamaro. He's the Vice President of Vehicle Security for Vox Electronics. Welcome, Joe.
How you doing, Ben?
Very well. And next to him, we have, of course, Mr. Rob Nelson, his world premiere on CMA here. So thank you for taking the time, Rob, to join us this evening. He's the president of Automobility Distribution. Welcome, Rob.
Thanks, Ben.
Down on the bottom left corner, reporting from Virginia Direct. His name is Al Fontaine. He is the vice president of sales, also representing Vox and Directed Electronics. Welcome, Al.
Yeah, thanks, Ben.
Last but not least, we have a hometown favorite. His name is Mr. Jean-Paul Raymond from Montreal, representing Fortin Electronic Systems. He's the sales manager for the brand. Thank you for joining us, JP.
Hey, my pleasure, Ben.
Last but not least, we're throwing a curveball into the conversation. A partner and a co-host of CMA, and also a very established retail entrepreneur, shall I say. I'm trying to find the right word for you, Jeff. Entrepreneur in the security and 12-volt arena. He owns Lockdown Security, and he'll be bringing some perspective from a retail standpoint. Mr. Jeff Bates from Lockdown Security. How are you, Jeff?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Well, first of all, welcome back from your vacation, Jeff, and welcome everybody. Guys, can't thank you enough for you guys to come together and take the time to discuss with us this evening everything there is to know about remote starters heading into this season. A lot of weird stuff, like I said. I'm hoping we can get into it, but perhaps let's start by kind of setting, the stage. Where are we at? I'm going to go to Rob with this one to start. How important is the remote car starter season to the Canadian 12-volt specialty retailer, Rob?
It's really important, especially the climate that we have, and that Canada really was the beginning of real remote start business years and years ago. And it gave an opportunity for retailers to sell other product at the same time when the customers came through the door for remote starters. And it's really, given car audio guys something else to do, except in our season of car audio is in the spring and summer, and that's how remote starters kind of became a thing for retailers, and now it's just entwined in the fabric of the business, really.
Right, and if I ask you, Joe, your company and brand is based in the U.S. Obviously, you provide a lot of product to the Canadian market. So I'd like to see that perspective from a Vox perspective. How important is the Canadian 12-volt, the remote start season for the Canadian side of business for you?
Yeah, for sure, Ben. I don't differentiate necessarily Canada from the U.S. We do when we look at the distribution and the customer base and everything. But remote start, whether it's what we sell in Canada or what we sell globally and in the U.S., is hugely important to Vox. It's a major category in the mobile electronics division of Vox. Certainly, my group, security and remote start is key. So this time of the year, from usually August to February, we're neck deep into remote start season, and it really goes right to the bottom line at Vox and our profitability. And I think that transcends through to touch a little bit on what Rob was saying. The same for our retailer customers, our expediters, new car dealers, that whole channel. It's extremely important, and I think every year it's continuing to get more and more important for them.
JP, you're, as a manufacturer and a Canadian one at that, you only make product in this segment. So to echo what Joe just said, I can only imagine how important this season is for Fortin as well.
It is very important to us. And you mentioned earlier how important is it for the retailer. I think one of the nice things about Remote Start for the independent 12-volt retailer is that it brings to their store totally different demographics than what they're used to under the rest of the year. So that demographic usually has perhaps a little more disposable income, and they're open to buy different stuff if they're exposed to it. So for the retailer, remote starts are important, and if they can find perhaps other products that can go along with that, the consumer is open and listening to them.
Yeah, I would only imagine, from a directed perspective, again, Viper Start, the whole starter segment, and all the infrastructure you have in place to support dealers, this is something that directed takes very seriously. It's not just about alarms anymore.
Oh, definitely. I mean, remote start is huge. And what's surprising, though, is the amount of people that still aren't familiar with remote start. With the OE putting remote starts on a lot of cars, that are coming equipped with them, it's actually bringing more interest in the remote start category. So it's growing every year. It's amazing how many of these remote start boxes we ship out. So it's definitely very important to us.
So that's I'm hearing it. It kind of confirms my suspicion that this is a big category, no doubt about it. And Jeff, I've saved you for the end of this question from a retailer's perspective. You being one, how much is that focus? Like, did you plan your vacation so that you can get back here in time to plan your starter season?
Oh, you know what? 100%. I actually feel a little bad. I came back a little bit late. I'd rather have been here even earlier in August because, I in my business, remote start is probably the most important segment that we sell, and it's the biggest segment that we prepare for, and the biggest segment that is I got to say, like, so seasonally busy. It keeps you busy from basically September to hopefully February, depending on the weather in our area. And, it's the time of year that I look forward to. It's pretty much, just like JP said, a whole new demographic of customers that you're going to be able to see. There's always new technology every year coming out in the remote start segment, and different things that are cool and new and exciting. And, I think that for many, many dealers, it probably, they would echo my sentiments that it's one of the most important times of the year for their bottom line and for their volume of business.
I know it's a little bit weird in most parts of the country. It's like 30 degrees. We're getting a little bit of a heat wave right now. So to start talking about, remote start in the cold season, I know it seems a little, early, but really it isn't, right? Because we're expecting some changes, and we want to be able to inform the dealers, especially those tuning in either live or on demand, of what to prepare for. So Rob, I know you were one of the first to voice this concern. I'm just going to get to the point. Are we staring down the barrel of some inventory shortages coming up this season?
Yeah, I think it's pretty obvious what's gone on. I think it's not a secret what's gone on in the car audio head unit products and what's happening with the car manufacturers. And I think the remote starters are impacted in a similar way in terms of microprocessor shortages, as well as logistics and getting product here. The price of getting product here, the timing of getting product here, it's going to be a challenge this year to be able to meet the demand, I believe.
What do you think about that, Al? Is that something that you feel from a directed viewpoint as well? You share that sentiment?
Definitely. And one thing we're doing with the customers is, we're actually sharing that with them and actually trying to get them to forecast and get orders in now. Joe mentioned earlier that we're doing allocations, a couple times a week, and that's one thing that, we try to share with them. If you have an order in, we can allocate to it. So yeah, definitely same as what Rob was saying.
I want to crunch down a little bit more on this general phrase of, delays. Maybe JP, you can help me understand. Are we talking the entire catalog of offering certain categories? What are we looking at here for delays?
Actually, what's probably worse, if you consider that a RF kit features 2 remotes, 1 receiver, and all of them need 1 chip. So you've already burnt out 3 chips. So that is one category that may be susceptible to have some supply issues faster than any other, quite frankly.
Mm-hmm. Joe, I'd like to leave you with this one. I know you always see the bigger picture of things. What are we looking at? What do we need to know above and beyond what these gentlemen have already shared?
Yeah, so it's a little bit more complex than just a chip or some. I think Rob touched a little bit on it. This year, I've been doing this for an awfully long time, and this year is probably one of the strangest years of my career. Usually at this time of the year, we're putting promotions together to incentivize dealers to bring starters in early in the year, right, in August. It's not that way this year. It's the issues span components, labor, freight to get over. It's so broad and so overwhelming that I don't think anybody has a clear path to a solution here. We're doing everything we possibly can to bring in as much inventory as we possibly can, but this is a very fluid situation. I know the car audio business is going through it. The industry experts, our factories, are looking at issues going into 2022, 2023. I don't know that really anybody knows. I'll tell you on the Vox DEI side, I give a whole lot of credit to our engineering teams, Joe Santavica, Sylvain, our Montreal facility, our Detroit facility. We started about 8 months ago developing new different chips to replace the ones that we were having issues with. So it's bringing up things that I think a lot of the manufacturers out there didn't expect to happen as quickly as it did. So, again, without sounding too negative, I'm afraid I don't want to do that. I don't want to scare everybody. We have inventory. We're getting inventory. We're bringing inventory in. We're air freighting inventory. I know a lot of companies are because of this important category for our customers. It's just going to be, I think, a little herky-jerky through the season instead of very fluid.
Hashtag herky-jerky. Noted. Rob, in car audio, right, nobody knew that this was going to happen. There was no forecasting it. All of a sudden, fires happened, this and that. But, being on the security remote start side, having known that could have affected, how early ahead did everybody try to, make a difference or put maneuvers in place to try to alleviate, right, the delay and the target?
I think it depends on what the problem was, and probably each manufacturer might have some similar problems and some different problems, whether it's logistics or labor. Or I know from my main supplier ADS's point of view, it was microprocessor issues that really they had no visibility to no fault of their own. Their manufacturer who was making their microprocessor, basically on this day they were supposed to ship, they didn't have advance warning that, okay, a month before we're going to have a problem. It was more like, okay, they didn't show up. They don't have the visibility. I don't think it's a certain things that it's, it's not that they didn't want to tell us. They were very transparent with us. And, we're just trying to make the best of a situation. I think what Al said before about getting the orders in, it's not because we want to get your orders to ship your orders. It's because we're going to get your orders and we're going to allocate and know what we have to allocate to everybody. And quite frankly, the good thing on the ADS side also is we kind of know the flashes. So we could see the flashes and when they did the flashes. So we could sort of know how much they need according to last year's flashes. So that's a good thing to have. And I'm sure the other guys probably have similar information. So that helps to know what the market needs.
Mm-hmm. That data would be critical for making the right decisions. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just to touch a little bit on what Rob said and with microprocessors, I think it's important for everybody to understand how many components go into a product, remote start, head unit, whatever it is. We're talking about one microprocessor. There's hundreds of components on a circuit board that make up that remote start. And if the microprocessor isn't there, the assembly line comes to a screeching halt. Or if the resistor or the diode's not there, you can't go further down the line. And, again, without talking about NXP or Microchip or all the different chip suppliers that are out there, everybody is dealing with, we place 2 years of inventory out of how many chips we're going to need. It's the delivery of those chips from Microchip or NXP into the factory. And when they say, yeah, we'll ship you 10,000 tomorrow, and tomorrow comes, they say, sorry, we can only give you 1,000 now. That's incredibly difficult to manage through that process. And that's what our entire industry is dealing with. I'm not going to speak for the car audio business. I'm not in that business, but I can just assume it's the same when it comes to component shortages. It would be different if that's all we were buying is that one component. It's much easier to manage something like that, but it's multiple components.
Could certainly go from a chip to a regulator to a diode to just about everything is hard to get by in terms of components to manufacture these days.
100%. I'm gonna skip quickly to the next question because we don't want to dwell on the delays. I think we understand what that is all about, but a glaring question, and I know it's probably on Jeff's mind as he's hearing you guys talk about this. Can we expect any increases in pricing due to these delays and challenges? I'm going to pass that to Al first, actually.
Yes, definitely. I mean, unfortunately, as Joe shared, the cost of getting the goods here, the cost of airing product in too, container charges that have skyrocketed. Joe can share more on that, but because he actually, unfortunately, has to deal with it daily. But it's shocking what's taking place right now.
You know what, JP, I'd like to hear what you have to say about this as far as pricing.
Well, essentially, now,
each one of you have options, right?
There's a little game being played out there. I mean, when you're buying components, or let's say you had bought components a few years back, like Joe was saying, 2 years in advance, they're calling you up and they're saying, we'll allocate this much. Well, you say, no, my order was for this much. They'll say, okay, if you want them all, it's going to be the price that was on your PO plus X. So that game is being played right now. So what can you do, right? You want them, you pay for them.
Rob, pricing, same thing on your end?
Yeah, I think it's exactly what JP and Al said. It's it's for example a container. Just if we take out the component side, which is a huge factor, but a container, went from I was paying $7,200 US for a 40-foot container, and now I'm paying $24,000. So, and that's everybody knows that. So that's not a secret. And then if we're gonna air stuff, I mean, air went crazy. Like we did air some stuff last year, and I can tell you that air is double of it was last year per starter. So that's in every industry.
Right. Yeah. No. Let's be clear. This is not just the remote starter industry.
Like you can't. At least with remote start, you have the option to air some stuff, and you can't air subwoofers in.
That's right.
You know what I mean? So at least you have the opportunity to air stuff.
Joe, did you want to speak to this point about the increase in price?
Well, sure. I mean, I think what's important to understand is I think everybody has increased their pricing in security and remote start category. Our official price increase is going to affect September 1st. We did that across the line in all the Vox products. We continue to fight off as much as we possibly can and limit the pass-through of the increases that we can for our dealers. And, you look at it in a remote start product, we have a couple of dollar price increase, a $4 price increase, whatever it is. And, it's hard. I get that part of it. But, when you look at it and like $4 at dealer's cost, if he raises the price $20 on a remote start, is that going to stop somebody from buying a remote start? I doubt it.
That's a perfect segue because I'm going to shift the mic over to Jeff. Now you're hearing there's going to be price increases at your cost level. How is that going to impact you as a retailer now in your strategy moving forward?
Well, I mean, it's going to definitely mean that there's going to be a translated increased price to the customer. I think it's really going to depend on the area that you're in and the business model that you have, but it's definitely going to translate into increased pricing across the board. And I mean, it's not just, it's everything, right? As we mentioned here, it's not just remote starts. Everything, it seems, in the entire consumer economy is going up for all of these reasons, for shipping delays, chip shortages, all of that. So, it's the typical word of inflation, right? So you've got to, unfortunately, to combat that, you've got to inflate your prices in kind, right? And then you have to do it based on a ratio of how much are your costs increasing and how much can your market bear, or how much do you perceive that your market or your customers will bear. But,
will the manufacturers be putting out any suggested rates or pricing based on these increases? Is that something that we can expect to see, JP?
Not really. I mean, we leave it up to the individual stores to do that kind of stuff. I mean, some guys will use a T-harness and will save on labor. Some other guys will do wire to wire, yet they feel that it's a better way of doing it and it's more cost effective for them. So it's very hard to come out with a price, to be quite honest with you.
So it's going to be in the dealer's hands, like to Jeff's point, depending on the market and so on.
Now, if you consider this, I mean, every consumer segment, whether it's your grocery, whether it's everything, has gone up in the last year. I mean, just look at the lumber if you wanted to build a house or something, or renovations. I mean, the consumer are aware that there's been price increases everywhere. We were talking about something, and I'll tell you something as stupid as cardboard. The other day, I had our production manager show up in my office and say, the cardboard for boxes went up 16%. What can I do? Got to buy it. We need boxes.
We need boxes. Okay, so I want to shift gears because I want to start looking from the gloom and doom into solutions, because that's what we want to do. We want dealers to be prepared and to be equipped to be able to tackle on what's coming on. So you mentioned chips. Are these delays affecting the entire lineup? I kind of touched on that, but let's dive a little bit deeper. Are we talking the digital systems that you guys make, or does it also affect the analog systems? Let's start with Rob.
I think it affects both, but look, the preferred in Canada, I'm going to say Canada because the United States, I believe, is the same way, but I don't know that market. But in Canada, everybody, when they can use a digital remote start or an analog remote start with a digital interface, is using one when they can. And I think that that will continue as long as there's supply of it. When there isn't supply of it, there'll be, dealers will ultimately have a choice to make of whether to delay the installation, and they might do that with giving gift certificates or delaying an installation or whatever. But if they want to do it, and there is shortages that I believe will happen, you'll see them going back to the old way of, like JP said before, wire to wire, and wrapping a key. Believe it or not, that what we did 10 years ago or 15 years ago. I think that it could end up going there if the digital product is in short supply. I wouldn't be surprised before the end of the year that people are wrapping some keys where they didn't have to ever do that, or never thought they would have to do it on certain cars.
So in all the podcasts we've ever done, this is the first time anybody's ever mentioned wrapping a key, and I know a lot of listeners might not even be aware of what that is. Joe, could you shed some light a little bit? I'm asking the question between digital and analog, and Rob's going there. So let's go there. What do people need to know?
For sure. So again, and just to expand a little bit on what Rob said and what your original question was, it's across the board. It's on everything. The increases of a resistor don't care if you're a digital starter or an analog starter. The air freight doesn't care if you're digital or analog. So the increases are real. They're across the board. They're on everything. The issue, though, between digital and analog is the number of chips required to build a digital starter versus an analog starter are a lot more chips required on a digital starter. So it's just supply and demand and the number of chips that are available. So, I personally think we went down a path even prior to all the issues that there were with component shortages. Directed had been moving down a path of eliminating analog and going all digital. When we acquired DEI, we have a little different mindset of that. Our mindset was, let's give the dealer what they want, not what we want to sell them necessarily. So we re-energized the whole analog side of the directed lineup. Vox we've always had in our Prestige and Pursuit and Code Alarm products always had a strong analog lineup. So we're running both products hard and strong. The recommendation, certainly from my perspective, would be for dealers to look at both solutions. Obviously, Rob's 100% and JP 100% spot on. Canada is way more digital than analog starter business-wise. But there are going to be delays and issues with that. I would encourage everybody to look at analog. It's either that or maybe not do installs one day. So when you look at that, and then you have an analog starter, how are you going to install that in a car? Well, you could use a interface module, a DB3 on a directed side, an ADS ALCA, an Evo 1, some Evo All, something like that. Again, you're back into digital with components. There's issues there, which then brings out, and it's funny, we continue to sell, we call them key in the boxes. You could wrap a key or you could use a key in the box. We have a group of customers that continue to buy that because it's a lower cost solution than a digital interface module. And we have some customers that just purely look at price. But going into this, I said, well, we better load up on key in the boxes. And then we had some discussions about doing some trainings on wrapping keys and doing this because, so I think I was having a conversation with Rob about it actually. And we started thinking about, are there installers out there who might not even really know what a wrapping a key is? Like they never did that. And I'm not impugning every installer. Everybody may know how to do that, but I think it's something to think about, certainly for this season, analog starters and wrapping keys for sure.
From a sales
it'll be a last
perspective,
resort.
yeah, Al, you see, you're on the sales side, of course. And have you seen any trend or spike in analog orders?
Well, definitely, because that's some of what we have in stock right now. As Joe said, that we ended up bringing them back. The good part about the digital and the analog product, though, it's the transmitters that the consumer sees. Like with our products, if it's a digital system, it uses the same transmitters as if it's an analog system. So when the consumer gets those remotes, let's say a 5706, the two transmitters that come with a 5706 are the same two transmitters that come with our digital RF kit. So, from a consumer standpoint, they're still getting, that remote start with those transmitters, which primarily that's what the consumer comes in to buy. They buy the look of the transmitter and the range. It's not like, hey, do me a favor, put that digital system in, it's not that, or that analog system. So I was glad when Joe and Aaron said, let's bring back the analog, because like Joe said, we had moved away from analog at DEI, and we're trying to force everybody to go digital. But thank God we brought them back for now, because now we can.
Good timing.
Yep, perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect timing.
Two things that are popping out for me right now. Number one, you mentioned it, I think, Joe and Rob, training. Like ever since the advent of the T harness, there are junior, entry-level technicians putting in starters every day because you guys made it so easy, right? With these great T harness solutions and digital products. And here we are saying that, well, this year we might have to go back to this analog stuff. That's one. And two, I heard some crazy price increases on factory keys. Like
it's not really
crazy.
Price increase. I think the two problems with analog is you have to explain to the customer, okay, you have to go get a key. Second problem is they have to pay for the key, and it used to be they used to have a lot of these cars used to have valet keys, which were very inexpensive way back when at the time. That doesn't exist anymore. So the keys are very expensive, and the other negative is, like, for example, Audi and Honda are delivering cars only with one key right now. So if you go to buy a car, you can't get the second key. So there's those challenges. And then from a tech support point of view, we have to be able to support the dealers on things we didn't support them with for a long time, like getting the right factory rearm and arm wires and right door lock wires, where it was all done digitally. So we never had to know all that stuff and explain that to the dealer. So there's definitely challenges with that as well, for sure.
Before we go too far, Jeff, I want you to chime in on this. This is maybe shocking news. Maybe you already forecasted this. As a retailer, analog, was this even in your game plan this year?
In our game plan, yeah. I mean, we sell a number of different styles and brands and types of remote starts, the majority being digital with T harnesses, but there still is a market, as Joe and Al has mentioned, there still is a market for the analog systems. And there are still, the key wraps are still around even today, but it has really moved towards a lot of the higher end vehicles or the German vehicles, that type of thing, where there wasn't or there isn't a digital solution for.
Sure.
And really what it comes down to, though, I mean, is what the dealers, I think, are going to have to do. They're going to have to polish up on their knowledge, like their wiring knowledge, and how to actually hardwire things rather than relying on CAN bus or flashes from a bypass to provide things like Rob said, like rearm and disarm. I think that dealers are really going to have to polish up, or installers are really going to have to polish up on their knowledge of relays. Relays being, the analog switch that can do a lot of things that the digital solutions can do. You're going to really need to have wiring software and databases that you can tap as a dealer to get your schematics for cars, whether you use your particular brand that you're buying their wiring databases, or whether you pay for things like Mitchell on Demand or any of these wiring software programs. I think that's going to be a huge thing, and it should be a huge thing for every dealer, but even more so when there's inventory shortages, because you're going to have to be very adaptable. And the way that you're adaptable is you have to have access to information, and information is, wiring schematics and databases and stuff. And training, I think technicians, especially the junior ones coming into the field or that haven't been in it for very long, training is something that they really should be looking at and going into as much as possible.
I'm going to give everyone an opportunity here. Jeff's touching on a really important point, and that is support and resources. So from a Fortain standpoint, what kind of support and resources do you have in play for dealers to lean on for this stuff?
Number one, we have our wire color program, which features a lot of the wires that Jeff just mentioned. And we have a solid tech support team that they're more mature guys, if I may use that word, that have done the analog system, that know how to dig up the wires and stuff. So they'll be in a good position to support the dealer. But to go back to the key wrap that Rob and Joe touched on, here's something that we have not talked about quite yet. I mean, our industry's been impacted and will continue to be impacted, but so did the automobile industry. And what this did for a lot of us that do R&D to come up with some new firmwares and stuff, vehicles were hard to get this year because dealers didn't have any. So the newer vehicle firmware is going to be a little less this year than it's been in years past. And it was simply due to vehicle availability. So yes, in a lot of cases, there's going to be some key wraps and there's going to be some stuff that will need to be done if they're not necessarily carryover models from the year prior and there's no solutions for them.
Very, very good. And Al, I'd like to hear about resources from a directed standpoint.
Definitely. We have a lot of resources. From the Vox DEI side, we actually have our DirectTech support page for the technicians. And then on the Vox side, we have the VoxTech support page also. But even more than that, we actually have our DirectTech's Facebook page with over 6,100 members on that page alone. And we also have the VoxTech Facebook page with over 2,400 members. So, from a support standpoint, from the two Facebook pages, those are open pretty much 24/7. And there's a lot of people that are very active in those pages that are always willing to help. But we have our DirectTechs, like I said, our webpage there, as well as the Vox one. The other thing that we have is a chat feature that's built into DirectTechs, where if it's just a quick question that somebody has, they can go ahead and type in to live chat, get a real quick answer that way. And on top of it, what we did, because as we know, when you're in the middle of the season and it's busy, there at times there can be some extended hold times. Last year we actually implemented a callback feature. So instead of having to sit on the phone, like I would always hear people say when I was out in the field, right, where they had to sit on the phone for a while, now they just hit a button to leave their number, and we give them a call back when it's their turn in the queue.
Very, very cool.
So a lot of features.
Yeah, absolutely. Rob, I'd love to give you an opportunity to speak to the support system that you have in place for dealers as well.
Yeah, so we have a CRM similar to what Al was mentioning about the callback feature. And we have our wiring program called Installer Companion, which we started back in like the late 90s. So it has a lot of those wiring features, like the hardwire stuff of factory rearm and door trigger wires and actually pictures, a lot of pictures of those wires and where they're located in the car. And at the same time, we have a full staff tech support team, and we plan on doing some trainings prior to the season. I think we're doing one with you guys, and we do our regular ones as well on some of this stuff that they might have to deal with during the year. Well,
thank goodness that you guys are, have all these systems in place, and I have a feeling they're going to be really, really busy this year, maybe more than others. So, best of luck on that point. Let's move on to planning. We've got the information. You've kind of given us the heads up on what's going on. Let's start with Joe. What advice do you have for retailers from a planning perspective?
Well, first, I hope I didn't, I hope this discussion is not freaking people out, right? So it's just.
I don't know. Jeff looks super calm, so I don't know.
Jeff looks fine.
It's about information, giving people information, letting people be able to properly plan and prepare. I think all of this can be, overcome by doing that and just being prepared and planning. My recommendation for dealers this year, and we've maintained this throughout since the issue started happening. Place your orders for what you believe you're going to need for the season, and get them in now instead of waiting until you need them. And we allocate towards those orders. So, I know people are worried about, well, if I place 1,000 pieces, you're just going to ship me all 1,000 at one time. I guarantee you that will never happen. At Vox and DEI, we're not shipping huge orders to anybody. We would, even if we had to, like I said, we're doing allocations twice a week. So even if we were shipping out orders twice a week to dealers, if we're fortunate enough to have enough to ship 1,000-piece orders to people, then, we would call, or the rep would call you prior to doing that to make sure you need it. But if you get your order in, get there so you can get something allocated to you. Again, whether that's digital, analog, whatever. I didn't want to imply or lead anybody to believe we're out of digital. That's not true. We're shipping digital product. Again, it's just to ensure you have it. I would recommend getting your orders in with whatever supplier you're buying product from. Get your orders in and let those companies allocate towards those orders for you.
Well, what message do you have, Rob, that could help add to what Joe just said?
I think exactly what Joe said. Get your order. We're not trying to scare dealers into giving us orders. We don't have a problem getting orders. So just, two things is, do your forecast, do your orders with your rep, and at the same time, don't be shy to charge more money for your installation and your work, because I think in some of our markets, the retail price was a race to zero, and dealers are, I think they should don't be shy on the price that they charge the consumer, because they're going to need that margin.
Very good. JP, I'd like to hear what you have to say.
If I was a retailer, I would make sure I have a 30-day supply of products. So if something of consequence should happen, it gives me a little bit of time to turn around and perhaps think of some other ideas to continue my season and not run out of product.
30 days out. Al, anything you'd like to add from an advice perspective?
Yeah, definitely. Don't be closed-minded. As Joe said, we brought back analog too, so we have kind of the best of both worlds. We'll have some digital product, we'll have analog product, and, go ahead and bring in what you need to be able to take care of the customers.
So I'm going to ask Jeff the question. Jeff, do you, I don't want to scare anybody, just like this is not the purpose. We're not here to freak people out, but this is going to cause a knee-jerk reaction to some, because not everybody reacts the same things to news like this. Okay, let's just be honest. That's how it is. From a retailer perspective, Jeff, is this like you saying, oh my gosh, I need to buy from everybody on the screen as much as I can get right now?
No, I don't think it's, I don't think it's reached a point that's like an emergency situation like that. I think it's just something to keep in mind, because this is something that is a challenge. And when you're in business and when you're, as an installer in an industry that's always full of challenges, it's just another challenge that you have to look at and overcome. Right. And I think that, as JP mentioned, I think that's a very good piece of advice. Make sure you have about 30 days worth of inventory that you forecast that you can sell. Don't over order, because that doesn't help anybody, including, the retailer. That might actually even hurt you. And it's going to hurt the industry in general. Just order for what you feel you're going to sell, and make sure that you have enough so that you can be flexible. And I think, my piece of advice would be, don't be afraid to diversify. I think a lot of guys in the car audio field this year found out that, there's something to be said about brand loyalty, and I'm loyal to a lot of brands, that have supported me, and I support them. But at the same time, you are in a business to be in business for yourself, and you've got to make sure that your personal interests are protected. So make sure that you look at different brands, and don't be closed-minded. Look at the analog solutions, look at the digital solutions, and formulate a game plan that you're not closed off to just one of those solutions. Make sure that you can participate in both.
Very, very good. And on the other side of that coin, I totally agree with what you say, but I think the takeaway that I'm getting here is, what? For the loyalty side of things, you heard, these are the guys that are allocating orders. They're not going to give some new customer, all of it just because they decide to order. They're going to look at, priority based on relationships, based on history, based on all that. And I have to believe that that's how this business works, right?
Yeah, for sure.
100%.
All right. This has been a really fantastic dialogue, guys. I think we've got a lot of insight. I want to shift gears just towards the end of this discussion to talk a little bit about the future. Now that we know what's happened, we're in the middle of it, we're reacting, we're forecasting, we're doing what we can. Rob, what do you see? Where do you see Remote Start a year from now?
I think next year you'll see maybe some more innovations in telematics and some more products built around telematics, maybe telematics being more accessible in terms of a price point for a consumer. I don't know about, the product in terms of on the Remote Start side, exactly the innovations, but on the telematics side, I could say that you'll see some more products that's more accessible to the consumer, let's say.
And what about inventory? Do you forecast this delay to continue well into 12 months from now?
I don't know. It would be more Joe and JP to answer that type of thing.
All right. Well, pass the baton. Joe, you're up.
Twofold here on what to expect out of Remote Start. I totally agree with Rob. We're putting a lot of emphasis on the telematics side of the business, on digital Remote Start side at Vox DEI, new vehicle applications, T-harness solutions. So our digital footprint is going to continue to expand. We're all in. We've invested a lot in that side of the business. So telematics, digital, certainly a growth category for us. Inventory wise, I think everything that I'm hearing back from our factories in the industry, this issue with chips is going to continue through 2023.
Okay.
But I believe, again, I said a little bit earlier with Joe Santavica and our engineering team, we're putting some things in place. I think it'll be challenging a year from now, next Remote Start season, but I'm predicting it's going to be better than this Remote Start season next year, but still bumpy.
Still bumpy. So the road, there's still a long road ahead. We're not in the clear anytime soon.
Yeah, and there's so many, Ben, there's so many things going on right now, geopolitically, globally, with chips and China and Taiwan and freight and the economy and inflation. God knows what's going to happen in a year. But with the component, the microprocessor, I think we'll make some changes with new developments and chips that we've done to help us through a bumpy period. But I still think for mobile electronics in general, I haven't heard anything that says 2022 is going to be any better. So
I'd like to hear from the Fortain side of things. Do you echo what Joe's saying?
I have to agree with you, Joe. Even though there were billions of dollars spent on building new factories, these factories will take time to get built. So I think that 2022 will continue being kind of the same way as far as product procurement for components. Now, if you're looking at starter and where the evolution is going to go, I guess the key is mastering CAN inside the vehicle. And as you master CAN, you can do more and more. So you can expect more features to come out in the next few years than just starting your car, doing lock and unlock.
Mm-hmm. Very, very cool. Jeff, anything you'd like to say about the future or any questions you may have for our esteemed guest this evening?
I think for the future, you're going to see, as Rob said, a lot more telematics, integration with Apple Watch and Google Watch and things of that nature. I think car security is definitely a growth industry again. I feel as though it kind of had a dip there for a few years. There wasn't as many people upgrading security in their cars, only because the cars were coming with what people perceive to be high security. But now, with the advent of so many the car theft industry, so to say, has really increased with all the push to start vehicles. I think you're going to see that as a dealer, a lot more demand for car alarms and immobilizers and that type of stuff, along with the remote start technology.
Very best. Al, I would like to just give you an opportunity. Any last message you'd like to give dealers who have tuned into this episode?
One thing Jeff mentioned was vehicle security. That has kind of gone by the wayside for why I have no idea. But in certain markets, it's all about the remote start or a remote start with security, but not security just by itself. I see a big opportunity in Canada. Now that I'm involved with Canada, I see a huge opportunity to touch base on security, because as I see these orders coming in, it's primarily remote start or remote start with security, but no security at all by itself. So, like Jeff, you hit the nail on the head. There's a lot of content theft issues taking place throughout the country, right? And both in the U.S. and Canada. People, they don't steal the cars as much as they used to. It's about breaking the window and taking whatever they can out of that vehicle. So, visual deterrent of an LED or whatever, and somebody knowing there's a security system on there, I think would definitely curtail some of that. So
Thank you, Al. Last message from you, Rob, to dealers tuning in.
Just everything that we said so far. It's going to be an interesting year. I think that the dealers that prepare for it, the biggest message I would have is just don't sell product too inexpensive.
Don't
Make
give
your
it
margin.
Don't give it
Make
away.
your margin.
Yep.
I think everybody here can agree with this one, right?
Absolutely.
That's good to see. Gentlemen, it's been a fantastic evening. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. CMA appreciates it, and I'm sure the dealers listening in appreciate it. It's something that I think was very necessary, and I'm very proud to say that we were able to pull this off and get it together and get the right information into the hands of the dealers. So thank you once again so much. On that, I bid you adieu. Thank you for tuning in. And
Thanks,
being a
guys.
part of
Thanks,
our
everyone.
roundtable. And I wish you guys, everybody, a fantastic remote starter season.
Thank you, Ben.
Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Great
Ben.
seeing you all.
Nice to
All
see
right.
you guys.
Okay.
Take it easy.
Fantastic panel of guests this evening. I hope you guys enjoyed that as much as I did, as informative and as entertaining. I mean, just a wealth of knowledge amongst those guests that appeared this evening. Just quick shout outs, voxelectronics.com, representing Vox Electronics, and that's directed as well. Automobility at automob.ca, Fortain at fortain.ca. And if you want to check out Jeff, he's got great YouTube videos, Lockdown Security Canada.ca. Lots of good stuff there, and we appreciate him for once again coming in and filling in that seat on behalf of you guys, the retailers. That was a fantastic one, guys. I hope you learned, you took notes, planned properly. It's going to be a bumpy road ahead, no doubt about it. All right, real quick, want to remind you to tune into CMA Connected every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at noon. Lunchtime learning sessions all the time. I go one-on-one. It's a fantastic time. Come on in, learn, get up to date on what's going on with whatever product I happen to be talking about that lunch hour. In only 2 short weeks, of course, we'll be back once again with our very next CMA Live episode. This time, we're going to shift gears from remote start to security and tracking systems, telematics. So lots of great brands are going to be there. Come on down. If this is the season, I know it doesn't seem like it, but it is around the corner. So in 2 weeks, CMA Live, all about security and tracking systems. Now, last but not least, I want to talk to you guys about our next virtual training event. It's called Fall Workshops. You might have seen that trailer in the beginning of this episode or online. It's going down September 13th to 19th. It's 7 days of educational hands-on sessions featuring a different theme per day. So you want to check out CanadianMobileAudio.com/workshops. The entire schedule, everything you need to know, that's where you're going to find it. And definitely perfect timing with some of the themes that we have at play there. That's it for this one. Thanks again for joining us, tuning in to CMA Live, presented by SiriusXM. I'm your host, Ben Wu. Thanks again to all of our guests this evening. Until next time, we connect.
There's never been a better time to have SiriusXM. With even more exclusive content, like over 140 channels in your vehicle, including the widest, deepest variety of music, ad-free. Root for your team. Get news. Listen to whatever makes you laugh. And hear all about your favorite stars. Your All Access trial includes more than ever before to enjoy online, on your phone, or at home. Create your own ad-free personalized stations powered by Pandora. Hear ad-free extra channels filled with music and enjoy favorite shows with Sirius XM Video. Thousands of hours of shows and performances on demand. What you love is on now.